خب افتخار ما این هست و بوده که ایشون در گروه فلسفه دانشگاه تهران سالها خدمتشون بودیم و بندم خدمتشون استاد بودن اونجا و بنده درس خوندم اونجا. بعد هم همکار علمی شدیم در این گروه و بعد از سالها تدریس در اونجا بازنشسته شدند. مدتی رو مسئولیت مرکز نشر دانشگاهی رو به عهده داشتن و عضو پیوسته فرهنگستان زبان و ادب فارسی هستند. کارهای زیادی آقای دکتر پورجوادی انجام دادند که همه دوستان از بنده مطلع بیشتر هستند و جای این داره که از زحمات ایشون تقدیر هم صورت بگیره. آقای دکتر پورجوادی موضوعی رو که عنوان می‌فرمایند مفهوم وحدت تمام ایمانها از منظر حکیم ایران شهری است. So our first contributor is Professor Nasrullah Purjawadi, and he will speak about Iran Shahri and the concept of faith. And شما به چه زبان به انگلیسی ارائه می‌کنید؟ He will speak in English, and we have we have short. I think we have a brief text of his referate here in Persian, and he will speak here as I have the program. In 25 minutes you have time. آقای پورجوادی 25 دقیقه خدمتون هستیم و بعد در پرسش پاسخ هم انتها در خدمتون خواهیم بود. بفرمایید آقای.
They have translated faith here as iman, but usually faith is used as synonymous as religion. So I'm really talking about the unity of all religions according to Iran Shahri, not simply faith. The paper I have written, as I was going over it this morning, is rather long, and I couldn't make it short, so I decided to just simply deliver in a way the paper without reading it. Let's see. The person I am going to talk about is called Iran Shahri. Iran Shahri, in fact, is the first philosopher, first Iranian philosopher who lived in the 9th century, which is 3rd century. And unfortunately, none of his works, although he wrote several books, none of his works is extant. And there are simply some fragments here and there which shows the way he was thinking about religion and the unity of all religions. In one of these sources is which belongs to some heresiographer called Abul Ma'ali Balkhi. He is called a pseudo-prophet, a false prophet. And he explains very briefly his idea about religion and about prophecy, and his argument for himself, calling himself a prophet. Before I begin to talk about this man and his idea, I should say that we have a very simple, usually we have a simple picture of how Iranians converted to Islam in the early centuries of the Islamic calendar. That is to say, in the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. We think that Iranians were mostly, if not all, were Zoroastrians, and over 2 or 3 centuries, they gradually converted to Islam. But this is a very simple and not a fair picture of the situation of conversion. Because, first of all, people were not all Zoroastrians. There were many Christians in Iran. And in fact, Christianity was very dominant in the early Islamic period, the beginning of Islamic era. And not only Christians, but also Jews. Jews were also very active, and they were populated. They were even active in government. There were a lot of Jewish dissidents in the 8th century and 9th centuries. And particularly in the western part of Iran, which is which used to be called Jebal, and the present Khuzestan. Jebal means mountains. The Kohistan, the cities like Isfahan, Rey, Hamadan, most Isfahan, for example, was heavily populated by the Jewish people, and so was Rey. And a lot of these conversions, in fact, took place from Christianity and Judaism, and to some extent Buddhism, and of course Zoroastrianism to Islam. And this was not a simple situation. Conversion was very complicated, and I will explain a little bit why it was complicated. In fact, this man that I'm going to talk about, Iran Shahri, and his ideas shows how complicated the situation was. The thing was that one of the major problems for conversion was the fact that people thought that well, first of all, Islam is a foreign religion. Islam was a foreign religion. It was a foreign language. They accepted many people accepted the Prophet, but his message was not understood. They couldn't understand what the message was because they couldn't understand Arabic, so it was not easy. It was not easy for them to lose their identity as Iranians, whether they were Zoroastrians, Christians, or Jewish people. They couldn't convert easily to what did it mean to convert to Islam? Well, we accept the Prophet. We accept Muhammad as the Prophet of Islam, as a great man. But what does it mean really to accept his faith, to accept his religion? This was a very important issue for them. Another issue was which was somewhat related to it, was Messianism. Messianism was very strong in the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries. And a lot of people were looking for Messiah, for Mahdi, for somebody who would save them, a savior, for a paraclete. And and in fact, many people, many Christians, and even Zoroastrians and Jewish people, they thought of the Prophet of Islam as the Mahdi. They thought of him as the Paraclete, and so their conversion into Islam was, and the acceptance of the Prophet of Islam was, in fact, following a sort of a messianic urge that it was very predominant in the 7th and the 8th centuries. Now, this man, Iran Shahri, who is said to have proclaimed himself a prophet, actually was a philosopher. He was a religious philosopher, I would say. And one reason for that is that philosophy really was not separated from religious ideas. Religion and philosophy were so much intertwined at that period, especially for Zoroastrians, for Persians. And Manichaeism was very strong and very influential. And a lot of people were being condemned by particularly during the Abbasid period, for being accused, for this accusation of being Manichaeans. And there are some signs, I believe, that this man was also under the influence of Manichaeans, and he knew. He was one of the early writers on religion. And the science of religions was very popular at that time. There are many books written on different religions at this time, and one of these books is what they call in German Religionswissenschaft. It was a science that actually started in Iran. They wanted to know what different faiths was. What do they believe? What do the Chinese believe? What do the Indians believe? What is really the message of Christianity? What is the message of Judaism? They were all interested in knowing different religions, and so they began to write about these different faiths, and one of these whom actually Abu Rayhan al-Biruni or Biruni writes that there are many people who have written about Christianity, about Judaism, about Manichaeism, but the best book, the most objective presentation is by this man, by Iran Shahri. And now he's said to have been the master or the teacher of Razi, Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Zakaria Razi, who is considered a free thinker, and who didn't believe in prophecy, didn't believe in prophets, and but his teacher did. He did believe in prophecy. He did believe in religion, religious ideas, and but he thought that essentially, now this is one of these main ideas, that all religions essentially say the same thing, one truth. There is one truth which is the foundation of all religions, all revelations, because there is one God. And if there is one God, you can have one message for all humanity. Now, why do they differ? Why do people differ in their religious beliefs? That is because the followers of the prophet in every religion, the clergy, the mullahs, they are the ones who make the differences. They are the one who cause the differences in religious beliefs. And so if we go to the root of any religion, we will reach the essence of world religion, in a way, of the universal religion. So in every religion, every man can delve into his own or her own religion. If it is a revealed religion, then he will reach the essence of, in a way, all religions. Now, the other point was that the other idea he had was that he believed in nativism, nativist religion. And when he said that, when he proclaimed himself a prophet, he said, I am an Iranian prophet. He believed in the prophecy of Muhammad, but he said that Muhammad was an Arab prophet. And he was good. He was true. He was true, but he was useful for the Arabs who could understand him. His revelation could only be understood by the Arabs. So for the Iranians or for Ajam, there should be other prophets. And he proclaimed himself a prophet for the Ajams, for the non-Arabs, not for other. Now, as I said, this was a very influential and predominant idea during the 7th and 3rd century. It was not claimed only by Iranians. Before Iran Shahri in the 9th century, there were other movements, there were other dissidents, particularly including among the Jewish people. You know, there are people who study the Karaites, or Karaim, as we call them, and they sort of isolate one or two. They're sitting in New York City. They isolate one or two individuals, and without knowing the history, without knowing the social circumstances, without knowing the language, they think that they are studying the Karaism by simply reading, something in some second or third languages. But the situation is that before Karaism, it was, and Karaism in Judaism started with the idea of nativism. What is nativism? The nativists were all the people in Zoroastrians, Judaism, Christianity, and Buddhism who wanted to convert, who wanted to proclaim their own religion. They thought that everybody, if you're a Jewish person, then you should have a prophet who speaks Hebrew to you. And you should have a book which is revealed for you in Hebrew language. And your prayers should be in your own language, in Hebrew. This was happening in Isfahan. And we have dissidents in Isfahan. But one of the most famous of these dissidents was Abu Isa Isfahani, who lived towards the early 2nd century, at the time of the Abbasid. In fact, he was killed by Mansur, al-Mansur, the the caliph, the Abbasid caliph, and he was a nativist, and all the nativist prophets, like Mughanna, like Babak Khurramdin, like Maziyar, they were all nativist prophets. They were all proclaiming their own religion for the Persians. And the first Persian book, a revealed book, in fact, it was claimed that it was a revealed book, was written by Beha Farid in the early 7th century, that is the 8th in the Christian era. It was written in Persian. Why? Because they were nativists, and they thought that the religion should be presented to the Iranians, to the Persian-speaking people. So we think of Protestantism coming to the 16th century in Europe, in Germany. We think of Protestantism as a protest. What is a protest to? I mean, what did they claim? They were against, as opposed to Protestantism, what do you have? You have Catholicism. What is Catholicism? Catholicism is universal Christian church. Universal Christian church. So this idea that you can have a universal church. This was in the 15th century. The Protestant movement was in the 16th century. Now this movement, if we trace it back, it actually starts with the advent of Islam in Iran, with the coming of the nativist movement in Iran, not only by the Zoroastrians, but by the Christians, by the Jewish people, and by other faiths, that the idea of universal Catholic Islam, Islamic chair, still did not exist. So first you have this nativist movement, and then in later centuries, in the 10th and 11th centuries, they define a Catholicism for Islam. They consider, they try to define Islam as a universal faith, a faith that includes everybody who speaks, whether he speaks Arabic or not Arabic, but they all must accept this faith as their own faith. This was against the nativist movements of the 2nd and the 3rd centuries. It was a reaction to these movements. Before that, this idea didn't exist in Islam. The Arabs did not think of their religion in the beginning, did not think of their religion as a universal faith. Can I have some water? You can offer. Okay, I knew I wouldn't have time to read my paper, but I didn't know that I wouldn't have enough time even to deliver the talk in. No, he has this man, Iran Shahri, has an argument for his case. He argues. He says that I'm a prophet for the Persians, and one of his arguments was that one of the things was that he had a book. At that time, everybody who proclaimed himself a prophet had to have a book. And so Beha Farid had a book, and other prophets also had books. And So did Iran Shari. He had a book. What was his book called? Now, everybody so far, all the editors of Abul Ma'ali's text have thought that the name, the title of his book was Hasti, which means in Persian, existence. As I said, he was a philosopher. But it was not Hasti, it was Hasti Dad. They thought, the editors and the previous scholars, almost everybody that I know, like Mujtaba Minawi, like Fatullah Mujtabai, like Jalal Humayi, like, Mehdi Muhaqqiq, they all thought that it was a verb. The dad, which is a suffix, is in fact a verb, but it is not a verb. It is hasti dad, just like you have khuda dad, you have khusro dad. It's always the dad is a suffix always for a deity or a king. It is given by. It is something given by Hasti. What is given by Hasti? By absolute existence. What is given by absolute existence except all the beings? So in fact, he is in this book, which unfortunately is lost. We have no trace of it except some fragments. Was about creation, was about emanations of the absolute existence. That is to say, all beings. So he talks about the universe that exists, and everything in the universe, everything that is on earth, everything on the skies, and whatever. Here in this life and hereafter is a topic of this book. But he also had an argument, a very specific argument. He said that I'm a Persian prophet, but before me there were also other Persian prophets. And one of them was Salman Farsi, Salman the Persian. Salman the Persian, he said, was a prophet. Why? Why was he a prophet? Because it says in the Quran, Was'al minna. He says, actually, it was not Was'al minna. It was Wasalmano minna. That is to say, Salman is one of us, a prophet. And the aleph is dropped. And he gives example. He says it happens all, with Osman, for example. Osman, they write without aleph. They used to write Salman without aleph too. And so his name is mentioned in the Quran. Therefore, he was sent by the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad. He was sent to Persia, actually after him, and because he had a message for the Iranians, and actually, as we know that it is Abu Rayhan Biruni says that Salman also had an Injil. What do you call it? Testament? For gospel. He had a gospel. Salman also had a gospel. Salman is very interesting. He's a very interesting. I cannot get into it. But see, the thing is that Salman was a Zoroastrian from Isfahan. Isfahan was heavily populated by the Jews. Now it's interesting that he is said to be a Christian, and from the section which is called J. And then, when he was very young, he leaves his father's house to go to a farm, and on the way to the farm, he happens to pass by a church, a Christian church, and he listens to the Christians saying their prayers, and he's attracted to it. And he goes into the church, and he stays in the church until evening. And this is the beginning of his conversion. He converts into Christianity. Then he leaves his house. He leaves his father's house, Isfahan. And because he asks the Christians, where can I find this source? This is said in the Islamic source. It said, where can I find the source of your religion? They say you have to go to Damascus, to the Byzantine territory. At that time, that is to say, you have to leave Iran. You have to go to Byzantium in order to find the source for your faith, Christianity. And he does that. He leaves, and he goes to several cities in Byzantium and western part of Iran, and he lives a life of asceticism. He becomes an ascetic, and he lives with monks in a monastery for some time, and he serves in churches, in monasteries, and finally he's guided by one of these monks in Amuria, and the address, it's very interesting. The address that he gives him, okay, the address that he gives him, Salman, is a paraclete, and he goes to Medina, and finally finds the Prophet of Islam. He finds the Prophet of Islam in his Christian faith. By being now, usually Muslim writers do not want to emphasize this, but or they even deny that he became a Christian. But the fact is that, I mean, all the sources say that he became Christian, and he found his paraclete in Christianity, and he embraced Islam after that. Now, in my paper, I have made a comparison between the life of Salman with Buddha Sef, with the story of Buddha Sef. No scholar so far has noticed it. That this is Islamic, the biography of Salman, which is included in the Prophet's hagiography, is an Islamic version of the story of Buddha Sef and Blowhar, which has its versions in Christianity, in Manichaeans, in several versions in Islam, and this is the earliest version. His life, his biography is made that. And in fact, Salman finds in the Prophet the Paraclete personified, the philosopher that he was looking for, the wise man that he was seeking. So using the story of Salman for Iran Shahri is very significant. Not only the idea that he was a messenger, but his life, going through all these religions, like Buddha, in search of the truth, in search of the divine wisdom, and eventually finding it in the person of the Prophet Muhammad is something that I'm sure Iran Shahri had in mind when he was referring to Salma. Thank you.